Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Manhattan Institute President Reihan Salam.
Good evening. Hello, everyone. I'm Reihan Salam, President of the Manhattan Institute, and it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you all to the 21st Annual Alexander Hamilton Award Ceremony. It is a real joy to be celebrating tonight's honorees among so many good friends and back in person in the heart of our home city. Tonight, we'll be honoring the work and example of two outstanding Americans, United States Senator Tim Scott and the investor and philanthropist John Paulson. Through their work, both men have embodied the vision set out by Alexander Hamilton of an America that is both enriched and ennobled by commerce, where children are able to go as far as their gifts and their grit will take them, and where America is one united nation, stronger than the many forces that would fracture it. These are also the ideals of the Manhattan Institute, so on behalf of everyone at MI, I would like to congratulate Senator Tim Scott and John Paulson on this well-deserved honor. Also with us tonight, on the eve of the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 terror attacks on this city, we are privileged to welcome several current and retired members of the NYPD, including officers who were on duty that fateful day and others who've spent much of the past year and a half protecting our city's most vulnerable communities, including synagogues that have faced vandalism and threats of violence. In their selflessness and bravery, these women and men represent the best our city has to offer. Please join me in a round of applause. We're now trying to turn the page on what has been a very challenging 18 months for our country and our city, and we'll hear about some of those challenges tonight. I must say, though these challenges are formidable, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic because I get to work alongside an unusually talented, scrappy, energetic, and creative group of colleagues who never fail to follow the evidence and speak the truth about the most important issues of our time, even when that means going against the grain, and who've worked long hours to make this evening possible. And I'm optimistic because of all of you. Your support and friendship has allowed us to reach an audience of millions over the past year to effect real policy change that's going to make life better in our cities across our country. And I'm confident that there's much more to come. Thank you all for joining us tonight, for supporting our shared work, and for helping us honor two exceptional people. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the chairman of the Manhattan Institute's board, a tireless champion of MI and the cause of freedom, limited government, and the rule of law, Paul Singer.
Thanks, Reihan. Good evening and welcome to everyone. As chairman, I'm proud to report that we've raised more than $2 million tonight. That's in actual money, not cryptocurrency. Thank you to our donors for your generosity and, importantly, for your resolute commitment to our work. A special word of thanks to our Platinum Patron supporters, including Ravenel Curry, Tim and Julie Dalton, Marilyn and Michael Fedak, Michael and Kristen Kaufman, Dan Loeb, the Ono Family Foundation, Tom and Diane Smith, and two gracious anonymous donors. Normally, this is where I would demonstrate my witty and hilarious inner self. But the gravity of the moment precludes that. This is a critical moment in the history of our city and our country. In important ways, the present is the time for which the Manhattan Institute was built. Violent crime is surging in cities across the country. Public school systems are failing our children. The criminal justice system and our prisons are failing both our citizens and those incarcerated. And woke insanity is threatening our Constitution and fundamental freedoms. MI has exceptional scholars who are addressing each of these issues in sophisticated, nuanced, and actionable ways. Policies matter, and MI scholars have developed relationships to influence policymakers and politicians. As part of MI's New York Reborn project, experts from the Institute have exchanged policy views with mayoral candidates and created an intelligent guide, a pro-growth, practical playbook to inform the next mayor's agenda. Judging by the condition in which the current mayor is leaving the city, the next mayor will certainly need it. It is, among other things, a how-to guide for city officials to get the city's finances in check, embrace educational pluralism, and remove barriers to our community of small businesses. In Eric Adams and Curtis Sliwa, we have two mayoral candidates who are open to our advice and share many of our priorities. Whoever wins, this will be quite a change from the de Blasio years. Faced with a public school system that too often seems to be run for the benefit of administrators and union officials rather than students, a dynamic which has been worsened by the pandemic, MI is advancing specific reforms, including more charter schools to unleash the potential of every child. As race relations have descended to multi-decade lows, MI scholars are promoting a colorblind vision of individual liberty, educational excellence, and opportunity for all, a vision that is resonating with Americans of every background. And as much of our nation's political and intellectual establishment have embraced never-ending bailouts and unlimited deficit spending, MI has never wavered from promoting and articulating sane and sustainable fiscal policies at every level of government. Tonight, we're privileged to recognize Reihan Salam, the president of the Institute, and Ilana Golant, the Institute's executive vice president, for their tremendous leadership. In the past year, the Institute's publication, City Journal, marked its 30th anniversary with more than 11 million readers. This was up 32% from last year on topics such as the ideological takeover of our schools, how to save the New York City transit system, and how to fix public housing. City Journal has informed members of Congress and local politicians on both sides of the aisle, driving public discourse and public policy in so many positive ways. Also during the past year, MI has endowed important new projects with exceptionally bright scholars, including Rafael Mangual and the team working on MI's Policing and Public Safety Initiative. Brian Riedel is working on the profligate spending in Washington, which has exceeded even his pessimistic expectations. Heather McDonald is addressing the ideological revolution that's doing such damage to America's premier cultural institutions. And Jason Riley is focused on the most contentious debates relating to critical race theory and the equality of opportunity rather than outcomes. With tomorrow marking 20 years since September 11, 2001, we're reminded that New Yorkers are a resilient and tough bunch, but we all must remain vigilant. We must not take as a given the relative safety and prosperity of the last 20 years. We are blessed by the heroism of our first responders. As Reihan mentioned, of course, we're joined tonight by a number of heroes, members of the police force who have spent the past year protecting Jewish institutions, as well as current and former New York Police Department officers, some of whom were on duty on that dark day 20 years ago. Thank you. As you know, at the Hamilton Dinner, we recognize leaders who embody the values that Alexander Hamilton championed, a principled belief in free enterprise and equal opportunity for all. I'd like to take this opportunity to share a word about the many achievements of tonight's honorees. Let me begin with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina. He has been a strong advocate for opportunity where it's needed most, as well as a voice of reason during divisive national debates. Throughout his time in public service, Senator Scott has demonstrated a mastery of the intricacies of policy and has done the hard work of shepherding bills through the Byzantine legislative process, seeking out common ground where possible. In an era without shared political heroes, Senator Scott is a figure whose patriotism and honesty is respected on both sides of the political divide. It's no exaggeration to say that John Paulson, our other honoree, is one of the best investors of our time. But we're honoring him tonight not for his success as an investor, but for how his generosity and public devotion are changing our cities for the better. John's philanthropy spans a number of causes. In 2012, John gave the Central Park Conservancy a gift which is still the largest single gift in its history. He's also been a steadfast and generous supporter of educational pluralism, providing the funding for new Success Academy schools to open their doors in Manhattan and Queens. This is an example of philanthropy at its best, using private capital, independent thinking, and creativity to conserve what has been given to us by prior generations and help build new institutions to better serve the generations to come. We were pleased to welcome John to MI's board recently. As I'm sure he'll attest, it's one of the most engaged boards of all out there. Lastly, we have put pledge cards on your table. Please consider digging a little more deeply where you can join me in supporting the courageous work of the Manhattan Institute. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Eva Moskowitz, founder and CEO of Success Academy Charter Schools.
Good evening. I want to begin by thanking the chairman of the Manhattan Institute, Paul Singer, and of course, Senator Tim Scott, who is an incredible champion of parental choice. On Labor Day weekend, my husband and I went to Central Park, as we do on most weekends, and there were people there celebrating Labor Day picnics, fitness enthusiasts biking and running on the loop, children laughing, playing in playgrounds. Every conceivable type of New Yorker was in Central Park on Labor Day. Central Park, in my opinion, illustrates some of what makes New York City one of the world's greatest cities. Yes, you can applause, please do. First, it shows how beautiful and beautifully planned our city is. No city in the world has such a large park right at its center. Secondly, it's an incredible symbol of the role of visionary philanthropy in making the city great. The Central Park Conservancy has invested more than $1 billion in Central Park, and nobody has been more generous than John Paulson, who in 2012 gave a transformative gift to Central Park. I still remember reading about this donation in the paper before I knew John personally, and I thought to myself, wow, what a visionary gift. John has said about Central Park, quote, "People of all ages, income levels, races, and nationalities walk through the park every day. Everyone is smiling, and it's all free. I consider this one of the greatest contributions to diversity, equity, and inclusion that I have seen. John has also been very generous with many educational institutions, including Harvard, NYU, the London School of Economics, and Success Academies, the charter schools I run. I can still remember John and Jenny visiting one of our middle schools and being so committed to educational equity. I suspect John has been so generous with educational institutions because of his personal experience. John grew up in a middle-class family in Queens, the son of Alfredo Guillermo Paulson, who emigrated from Ecuador at the age of 16, 1 year after becoming an orphan. Anyone who went from modest circumstances to great success especially understands the role of education in that. But there is the question of what type of education children should receive. Several years ago, John and his wife Jenny wrote that, quote, "For children of all races, we strongly believe that schools should value and define success in terms of hard work, earned accomplishment, merit, a commitment to academic rigor, and personal integrity." Alas, this is the type of statement that gets you into trouble nowadays. People say that if someone who is successful talks about hard work and merit, they are failing to acknowledge their, quote, privilege, and are putting forth a false narrative that society is perfectly fair and colorblind. So should we stop talking about merit and hard work because it is impolite to do so? I would say that to the contrary, we have a moral obligation to preach what we practice. John and so many of you in this room really understand how to achieve success. You know the role that hard work, merit, and educational accomplishment play in achieving success. It's important to share that knowledge. Of course, our society isn't perfectly fair. It isn't colorblind or class blind. However, constantly telling young people only that society is unfair and the system is rigged against them creates hopelessness and undermines their sense of agency. Young people need to understand that even in an imperfect society, hard work and merit can still take them far. Being silent about this is no virtue. We have an obligation to preach what we practice, what we know has worked for us and will work for others. And that, of course, is what John Paulson has done and what the Manhattan Institute is all about. It's about sharing ideas that we believe will help the lives of all people in society. And John Paulson is a very deserving recipient of this year's Alexander Hamilton Award because he's been a leader in practicing what he preaches and preaching what he practices. It is my great pleasure to introduce my friend, John Paulson.
Good evening, everybody. And first, I want to thank Eva for that beautiful tribute and just congratulate her for everything she's done for children in New York City. And I also want to thank the Manhattan Institute for this honor. Manhattan Institute is an institute I respect and admire greatly, so for me it's a privilege to receive this award tonight. And I want to thank everybody here for coming tonight. It's so wonderful to see so many supporters here on Friday night out in New York again. So thank you, everyone, for coming. But I wanted to talk tonight to lay out some of the challenges that we are facing and why the Manhattan Institute is so important in addressing these challenges. And when I say challenges we are facing, I mean both as citizens of the United States and as residents of New York City. The United States is still the greatest country in the world. A country that stands for and strives for equal opportunity, freedom, and justice. Yet, we cannot take our greatness for granted. The United States became the greatest country in the world due to our commitment to certain core values that have stood the test of time, even if, as human beings, we have at times been flawed. In policy, our central commitment has been to individual rights and limited government, a tradition that we inherited from the English and that stretches back to the Magna Carta. Our Constitution was crafted to protect these rights, and it became stronger over time, particularly in the wake of the Civil War and the end of slavery, when a series of amendments addressed the Constitution's most glaring omissions. In addition to the institutions that have made our country great, it is also a set of cultural convictions, the importance of strong families, the virtue of hard work, and the importance of education. Tying these values together is a shared belief that competitive capitalism is by far the best economic model for a free society. Fundamentally, capitalism means the freedom to make something of yourself and make life better for other people. Over time, capital has proven to be the surest way to economic growth, which has lifted more people out of poverty than any government program ever could. There is obviously a role for government too, but a role limited by our Constitution. The government provides the rule of law, infrastructure, educational opportunities, and a safety net, as well as regulations that serve the public as a whole. Combined, these values, protection of individual rights, limited government, importance of education, culture of hard work, and commitment to capitalism have been the foundation for success and prosperity in this country. But our nation's foundation is under attack. More and more, we're seeing a sharp turn against limited government, strong families, hard work, and education achievement. Consider education. A good education has been the route to a better life and an equalizer of opportunity. But increasingly, educators seem fixated on undermining this country's values, especially our dedication to equal opportunity instead of equal outcomes. Our education system has become increasingly resilient to even measure the skills it's teaching students, which we see in the backlash against standardized tests. And the effect has been startling. According to the Pew Research Center, the U.S. now ranks 38th out of 71 countries in the review in math scores. It's just shocking how far we've fallen. We are also losing ground as it comes to the rule of law. After decades of declining crime, our murder rate has been going up in cities around the country. And as we rightly push to stop bad policing, we are neglecting the value of good policing, the kind that saves lives and revitalizes neighborhoods, the kind that fueled New York City's residents in the 1990s. And of course, we're losing ground on basic fiscal management. The federal debt has long been growing at an unsustainable clip. Then last year, the federal government was forced to spend its way through a frightening public health crisis. But this year, there's little talk of bringing things back under control. Instead, we're talking about spending trillions more to grow government programs. If all this is true of the country as a whole, it's even more true of New York City. Even before the pandemic, the city was facing fiscal challenges. Although New York City residents pay the highest tax rates in the country, the incoming mayor faces a budget deficit of more than $5 billion. New York City's government, based on last year's figures, spent an incredible $10,700 per capita. For context, Boston, a city with a similar heritage, spends less than half at $4,700. And Dallas only spends $2,800 per capita. Does New York City have such a high-performing government that it's worth it? Have our tax dollars brought us pristine streets and efficient social services? I can see by your laughter you don't think so. Spending 2, 3, even 4 times as much per capita as other large cities and delivering below-average results. Take education spending as an example. New York spends $28,000 now per student in its city-run public schools. Dallas, as comparison, spends just under $10,000 per student. Despite spending 3 times as much per student than Dallas, New York ranked in the 3rd quartile, while Dallas ranks in the 1st quartile. So New York's government is spending more and more and doing worse, educating kids who need good public schools the most. As Eva said, I believe there is nothing more important than education in reducing inequality in our society. There is a direct correlation between poverty, incarceration rates, income, and education. All these metrics improve with higher levels of education. That's why it's a shame that New York City spends so much with such poor results for the most vulnerable segments of our population. That's also why the work Eva Moskowitz and Success Academy do is so important. 90% of its students are from underrepresented minorities, yet Success Academy schools rank in the top 1% of all public schools in New York State. We're hopeful that the next administration will facilitate the growth of Success Academy so that more children can receive a first-class K-12 education, prepare themselves for college, and achieve the American dream. Thank you, Eva, for offering the best education to the children that will benefit the most. I'm so honored to have you introduce me tonight. And it's not just in education where spending is high in New York City and outcomes are low. Similar problems exist in public transportation, city-run hospitals, and in out-of-control pension and healthcare expenses. And Americans, we know, are voting with their feet, with people leaving high-tax, inefficient states like New York and migrating to low-tax, efficient states such as Florida and Texas. The next couple of years will be crucial for New York. It needs to get off the path toward becoming a failed city, a place where our best days are behind us. The country as a whole needs the same wake-up call. And I believe the work being done at the Manhattan Institute is going to be essential to that process. Scholars at Manhattan Institute are holding policymakers accountable. They've highlighted the risks of irresponsible fiscal policy and pointed out the ways we could reduce spending and improve services. They've exposed the racially charged propaganda that schools have been foisting on the country. And they've marshaled the data to prove that we need the police around to keep crime low. On many of the most pressing issues facing our city and our country, the Manhattan Institute has offered rigorous, evidence-based policy solutions that policymakers can use to restore public safety, bring budgets under control, and support economic growth. The Manhattan Institute is doing the hard work and laying the intellectual foundation to make a comeback a reality. America is still the best country in the world, and New York is still the greatest city in America. The Manhattan Institute is leading the charge to make sure that we as a country and as a city maintain that position of leadership. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Shay Hawkins, President and CEO of the Opportunity Funds Association.
So good evening. I do some work with the Manhattan Institute periodically on panels and things along those lines. And so, I was going to freestyle, but based on that, the team decided to make me write everything down here to keep my comments under 4 minutes. So we're going to get through this quickly. We are here, and it is my great honor to introduce Senator Tim Scott. We're honoring him with tonight's Hamilton Award. And Senator Scott is a good friend of mine, but he's also my former boss. He was Chiffon Davis's former boss, Joe McEwen's former boss, Jerron Smith out there somewhere, I think. So there's a few of us here, but we're not here to talk about how great of a boss Senator Scott was. We are here to honor him for the great work he's done in his long career in public policy. So I met Senator Scott back in 2009. I had just had a very severe car accident, and the first event I went to outside of my house that wasn't physical therapy was a meeting with Senator Tim Scott. All of the local folks told me, hey, there's a guy you gotta meet. He's coming to Cleveland, Ohio to tour our charter schools. So Ohio doesn't do a lot great, but we do school choice well. We're leaders in school choice, as Senator Scott was to become. And so I had no idea that 7 years later, I would end up working for him and helping him to draft significant parts of the tax reform bill. Senator Scott rose from a very difficult upbringing to join Congress in 2010 when he was elected to the House of Representatives after more than a decade on Charleston County Council. 3 years later, he was appointed to the Senate, where he kept his seat in 2 elections, and hopefully we'll make that 3 here coming up. And he was the first black senator from the South since Reconstruction, and has been a great defender of equal opportunity, good policing, and national unity ever since. And we should also note that Senator Scott is the first and only African American in history to be elected to both the House and the Senate. So we're very excited about that. As you all know, Senator Scott is amongst the nation's strongest advocates for charter schools and opportunity zones. He has consistently pushed to give parents more choices in where they send their kids to school, including during this past year and a half, while widespread school closures and learning loss showed more clearly than ever why families need options. And he spearheaded the successful effort to include opportunity zones in the 2007 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, a policy that encourages investment and entrepreneurship in nearly 9,000 of the nation's poorest census tracts. Senator Scott has also become a major force in the debate over police reform when so many others have kind of retreated into slogans and partisanship. Like most Americans, Senator Scott believes that you can do two things at once. One, we know that police are a crucial element of public safety, especially in the nation's most fragile communities. And two, there are ways to improve policing and do a better job at holding bad actors accountable. He's fighting to address real problems when rejecting efforts to defund or otherwise undermine the men and women who put their lives on the line to protect all of the rest of us. And so more broadly, Senator Scott has fought for national unity, arguing that the forces pulling us together are actually stronger than the forces that are trying to pull us apart. He knows the country is not perfect and has spoken movingly about his own experiences with discrimination. But he also knows that America's founding ideals are sound, and that we've made immense progress towards those ideals, and that it's wrong to declare America to be a racist enterprise and to label Americans as oppressors or oppressed simply based on the color of their skin. Fortunately, Senator Scott's only 55 years old, and he will be inspiring and fighting for us for many years in the future, both in the Senate and whatever else comes. But already tonight we have so much to honor him for. He is the living embodiment of the American dream and a force for good in this country. So now I'd like to welcome the man himself to the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Tim Scott.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Wow, very kind, very kind. Thank you. Obviously, when I finish speaking, you guys get to go home, so they're excited for me to speak and get out of here. Thank you very much. I understand that part. Let me just say to Shay, who introduced me, as I was working through the Opportunity Zone legislation, I had some really good ideas, and much of it I stole from Jack Kemp and the Enterprise Zones. But it was Shay Hawkins who actually wrote the legislation on my behalf. And I want to thank you, Shay, for your hard work, your dedication, and your brain. God bless you. We are literally being served by some of the greatest folks I've ever had a chance to watch do their jobs. If you would take a minute to thank the folks that's serving the tables all over this room. Thank you all for the way you've taken care of us tonight. I also had a chance to walk around a little bit because when you're a nervous guy from the South, you don't want to sit there and eat I thought it was pork chop, but it's actually lamb chop. Figured I wouldn't do that. I walked around and hung out with folks at different tables, and I had a chance to go over here and talk to some of New York's finest, the law enforcement officers, the retired officers. God bless you all back there. To every single first responder in this room, we owe you a debt of gratitude. We really do. Thank you for the way you do your job. Thank you for your heart and your passion. and your compassion for people. To the Manhattan Institute, thank you. Thank you for the work that you have done for years, 44 years or so, on issues, economic opportunity, education, equality, and community stability. You all do it better than any other institute in our nation. I think we need more Manhattan Institutes around this country. I've recommended satellite sites in cities all over the nation. Paul, I'm going to let you figure out how to get that done. So, Chairman of the Board, it's all your responsibility. You guys work together, okay? The new members of the board can contribute as well. So this is a very important work. I'll say this, that in many ways, I am literally living my mother's American dream. And the reason why I stand before you today excited about where we are and what we're talking about is because in this country, it is real that anybody from anywhere at any time can rise beyond their wildest imagination with just a few pieces of life's puzzle. Eva Moskowitz spends her life making sure that one of the pillars that's really important, the pillar of education, is accessible to kids who have incredible and unlimited potential. But where they live, access to a quality education isn't a possibility. But it's her drive, her tenacity, and the willingness to get folks to support your dream and your vision, maybe folks at your table. Working together makes all things possible, and thank you for doing what you do. Without any question, Success Academy is a major success for the nation. I've said it several times before, but I'll say it again. I had the good fortune of being raised by a single mother in the Deep South, mired in poverty, who believed that there's dignity in all work. My mother worked 16 hours a day, 3 days a week, and 2 days a week. She worked 8 hours a day because she felt like it was her responsibility to make sure that there was a model of work in our household, that me and my brother would always see someone going to work. And if she could do it herself, it was her responsibility to get it done. Do not ask anyone to do for you what you can do for yourself, was my mama's model. And literally, she showed me the way to success in a way that no one else could have done. And I will say that, as you all may be aware, that some kids don't pay attention as long as they should. Anyone raised a kid like that? Oh, just my mama. Okay, anyways, I'll talk to you anyway. So, my brother was a perfect kid. I was not. So from 7 to about 14 years old, I started drifting in the wrong direction. I thought the challenges of my life, the fact that my father was not around, gave me reasons not to be dedicated to my own future. And so as a freshman in high school, I failed out of school. Didn't have an Eva Moskowitz in my neighborhood. I failed Spanish and English. Now, when you fail Spanish and English, no one calls you bilingual. They call you ignorant because you can't speak in any language. Also, receiving the Alexander Hamilton Award is a blessing. I did, however, fail civics as well. Now, after 8 years in the Senate, I am not the only one failing civics in the United States Congress. I had the privilege of having my mom come home from work and trying to encourage and motivate me during that very tough year. And she would always tell me that if you just shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you'll be among the stars. And she was a great motivator, and she was my inspiration. But after my freshman year and the debacle that it was, she came home about 11:40 one night, walked up the stairs in our apartment. She looked at my report card. She looked at me. She looked at my report card. She shook me a little bit, and she said, "Sweetheart." I pretended to be asleep. She said, "Baby." She said, "Timmy." I said, "Yes, ma'am." She says, I worked so hard for so long, and this is the best you can do? I didn't really grasp the gravity of the situation until she pulled me by my hand, walked me downstairs, and went outside. So I knew that I was going to Cliff, I knew I was going to have an actual lesson about moon and stars. But she said I had already failed that course. So she walked me over to a little tree, and she said, pick a branch. So great. So I picked a branch. She said, pull the leaves off. Remember, this is South Carolina, not New York. This was legal at the time that it was done. I'm not sure what you guys do up here. Anyway, so I took the leaves off, and she said, I said, Mama, what is that? And she introduced me to the psychology of a switch. Now, for those of y'all not familiar with the Southern traditions, a switch is a Southern apparatus of encouragement. It is typically applied from your belt to your ankles, and I was thoroughly encouraged. Went to summer school and never failed another subject in my entire life. I also never heard shooting for the moon and missing the stars either, but there's something about discipline that really works. And so when we think about and talk about the importance of education equality, when we think about and talk about making sure that there is quality education in every single zip code around the country, the consequences of not having it is instability in our nation that grows into more crime, more dependency, and really the loss of the American fabric. It starts being strained. So I can't underscore or overemphasize the importance of the work that so many in this room are doing today and every day in supporting school choice, whether it's charter schools, public schools, private schools, virtual schools, home schools, every part of the school apparatus that improves and provides competition and quality education for our kids makes America stronger and healthier and more independent. It protects the goose that lays the golden eggs. That's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about having satellite locations of the Manhattan Institute, where we have great, I'm going to keep pushing that, by the way. Just know, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell you what I told you. We need more of what you do here everywhere, because I will say that this think tank, this institute provides the type of expertise and the scholars that are really important to winning the debates. I am actually an optimist and believe that 80% of the people still want to have a civil public forum where we debate the big issues of our future. That requires us to do the hard work every day so that public forum remains civil. And the Manhattan Institute, Reihan, you do it in a way that is with respect, typically courteous, always fact-driven, and compelling. For some reason on the right, we think that if we're not shouting louder, people can't hear us. It's wrong. It's not effective. Politics is a game of addition. And in order for us to change minds, we have to first address the heart. I think it was Jack Kip who said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's our responsibility as conservative leaders, to help people understand the heart, the why, before we start having a conversation about the what. As I entered into my sophomore year, I had the good fortune of meeting a Chick-fil-A operator who was a small business owner who saw something in me that I literally could not see in myself. And John Moniz, that Chick-fil-A guy, spent 4 years investing in me and teaching me some very basic principles that I am so thankful for today and every day. And as that kid, when he met me at 15 years old, I thought the only way out of poverty for a poor kid in Charleston, South Carolina was either entertainment, athletics, or drugs. Those are really bad options for 99.9% of our kids. And I'll tell you that 2 of my friends growing up went the route of drugs and made a lot of money for a little while. One was shot through the chest at 21, and the other one died at 18. And my best friend spent 7 years in the federal penitentiary. There are consequences to those who need to hear the truth. If there are not enough truth tellers in those communities, we all lose. And John never gave up on me. He never surrendered. He always wanted me to know that having a job was a good thing, but creating jobs was a better thing. John taught me that ultimately, he said, son, your income will decide your lifestyle, but your profit can change your community. Profits are always better than wages. It took me a little while to figure that out. When I sold my business and the Obamacare 3.8% was tacked onto the 20% capital gains tax, I understood what he meant. It got real then. But one of the things that you all do really well is talk about economic opportunity and economic mobility. And I think it's our responsibility for those of us who are living the American dream to not forget to spend time in places where people don't necessarily invite us, so that we are the difference that people need to see in places where very few people go. I will tell you that John was right, I was wrong. As a lifelong Dallas Cowboy fan, thank the 14 of y'all right at that one table. Table 33, Tony Dorsett's number. God bless you all. The Giants fans are going to kick you out in just a few minutes here. I am so glad that after my senior year in high school, I had a major car accident, went through the windshield, broke my ankle, missed 8 weeks of my senior football season, lost lots of scholarships, ended up with a small scholarship. I am so thankful that for 4 years, John taught me about business, about buying my mom the house, not through my activities on the football field, but through learning the business principles that always lead up. So many young kids today who grow up in neighborhoods like I did want to take care of mom. They want to have the security to know that their families will always be better off. And the way we get there is not by selling them a pipe dream of athletics or entertainment, or no one's selling drugs, at least not as a profession. We can do what others say is impossible. The American dream, it's alive. It's healthy. It just needs a little push in the areas where people today have lost hope. I look around this room and I see a lot of John Monises who've really invested a lot of your resources in making New York and this nation a better place. I look around this room and have had conversations with a number of you who are passionate about this nation. I think the thing that we have to defend the most is the American culture. The thing we have to defend the most is making sure that we protect the goose that lays the golden eggs, so that each generation benefits from the work done by the previous generation. And when that happens, the next American century starts. We are not finished yet. Our best days are without question getting ready to start. The challenges that we feel today, there's a book called The Storm Before the Calm. I believe that we're in the middle of a storm. I think it's a necessary storm. I think sometimes you have to look in the mirror and see if you recognize who you want to be. Are your dreams still alive? Are you still working to make a difference in someone's life that you'll never meet? That's the story of America. And if we do what we're supposed to do, when we're supposed to do it, the day will come when this nation is able to stand to the greatest threats outside, because today we have to deal with the greatest threats inside. We are very distracted from our work as a global leader because we're so focused on the look of a person, on the religion of a person. That's not America. America believes in the content of the character, not the color of the skin. My mentor was a white guy who didn't have a program to become a part of. He just saw someone who needed a little help, and he gave me a little push. Everybody that I know is willing to do something for someone who cannot pay them back. It's because we are an exceptional people. Never forget it. Never look down when you're talking about us. And always remember that the best is yet to come. And you represent that best. God bless you, and thank you for the award.
Hello, everyone. I wanted to thank you all once again for joining us in celebrating our honorees tonight. As a reminder, our team is going to go around to pick up pledge cards, so please do consider making a gift. Your support is greatly appreciated. I also wanted to thank my MI colleagues who worked so hard to make this night a success, especially Ben Burney, Alana Gallant, Michelle Jacob, Kayla Lewis, Aaron Ricks, Susanna Ragusa, Emily Vanderland, and all those on staff who are working here tonight. The bar will stay open another hour, so please do stay and enjoy a drink responsibly, if you'd like. And with that, good night, and I hope to see you all again very soon.